Helping the anxious child become brave. Keynotes. Understand the root of anxiety in children. 2. Create a safe and predictable environment. 3. Build trust through consistent presence and empathy. Teach emotional vocabulary and expression. Model brave behavior in daily life. Empower. Through small wins and gradual exposure, reframe mistakes as growth opportunity. 8. Integrate mindfulness and grounding techniques. Collaborate with educators and counselors. 10. Nourish resilience through unconditional support. Introduction. In every child lies a world unseen, a universe of thoughts, fears, hopes, and dreams. But what happens when the child's inner world is gripped by fear, worry, and invisible monsters that whisper, "You can't do it," or "You're not safe"? Anxiety in children often hides behind quiet eyes, trembling hands, and nervous behaviors. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers and waits. But when a child's inner world is at war, our job is not to fix them. Our job is to walk beside them until they feel safe enough to fight for themselves. Imagine a child sitting in a classroom, heart racing, palms sweating, convinced they're going to fail a test or embarrass themselves during a presentation. Now imagine that same child months later, standing tall, smiling confidently, presenting with ease. What happened in between wasn't magic. It was understanding, healing, and a strategy rooted in both compassion and courage. In a world flooded with distractions and noise, anxious children often go unnoticed. And if we don't see them, we fail them. But if we choose to lean in, to listen, to understand, we give them a shot at becoming brave. Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's the choice to move forward despite it. So how do we raise a generation of children who are not paralyzed by fear, but emboldened by love? It doesn't begin with telling them to be strong. It begins with showing them what strength looks like when it's clothed in tenderness. This is not just a psychological journey. This is a spiritual one. Because to raise a brave child, we must first rise as brave guides. This speech is not just for parents. It is for teachers, counselors, caregivers, and every adult who has stood in front of a trembling child and wondered, "What do I say?" Today, we walk through 10 transformative principles that have the power to turn fear into faith, anxiety into assurance, and children into the bold individuals they were always meant to be. Understand the root of anxiety in children. Children don't enter the world with a full understanding of their emotional landscape. They rely on the adults around them to interpret their behaviors, help name their feelings, and guide them through unfamiliar emotional terrain. When it comes to anxiety, the challenge lies in its invisibility. Unlike physical illnesses, anxiety doesn't often leave visible marks. Instead, it hides beneath silence, avoidance, restlessness, and even aggression. To help an anxious child become brave, we must first become detectives of the soul, learning to see what they cannot say. Anxiety in children often stems from a combination of genetic, environmental, and psychological factors. Some children are born with more sensitive nervous systems. They are naturally more vigilant, observant, and cautious, qualities that, while strengths in the right setting, can morph into anxiety when coupled with instability or trauma. A child raised in a home filled with unpredictability, whether from inconsistent discipline, marital conflict, or frequent moves, may begin to internalize the world as unsafe. Even something as subtle as a parent's unspoken stress can transfer onto the child without either party realizing it. Understanding the root means asking not, "What's wrong with you?" but "What happened to you?" It requires paying close attention to the context of their anxiety. Has there been a recent loss or transition? Do they struggle more in social situations or academic settings? Are their fears linked to separation from caregivers, fear of embarrassment, or excessive worry about the future? Every child's anxiety has a story, and when we stop to listen, we begin to write a new chapter, one of healing and hope. Anxious children often use behavior as their language. They may refuse to go to school, complain of headaches or stomach aches, cling to caregivers, or become unusually irritable. These behaviors are not signs of defiance. They are cries for help. The more we understand this, the more compassion we will feel, and the more strategic our support will become. Instead of punishing avoidance, we address the fear beneath it. Instead of dismissing tears, we recognize the courage it takes for a child to be vulnerable. Another important step in uncovering the root is to observe patterns. When does the child seem most anxious? Around whom? In what settings? Keep a journal if needed and track the possible triggers. Are they sensory in nature, like loud noises, bright lights, or crowds? Are they social, like peer rejection or performance pressure? Are they attachment-based, fear of abandonment or loss? Each clue adds depth to the map we need to navigate their healing journey. Often, anxiety is linked to a distorted belief system. A child might believe, if I make a mistake, no one will love me, or if I leave mom, something bad will happen. These irrational thoughts need to be uncovered and gently challenged. Cognitive reframing can help, teaching the child to identify, question, and replace anxious thoughts with more realistic ones. But that cognitive work only works when safety has first been established. A child cannot think clearly in the presence of fear. Parents and caregivers must also examine their own responses to anxiety. Do we rush to rescue them, unintentionally reinforcing avoidance? Do we push too hard for bravery, overlooking their need for comfort first? Do we model anxiety in our own lives, overreacting to stress, over-controlling their choices, or expressing fears openly? Children absorb not just our instructions, but our energy. The way we handle our own anxiety becomes the blueprint for how they handle theirs. Understanding the root of anxiety also requires partnership. Therapists, school counselors, pediatricians, and child psychologists can offer valuable insights through assessments and behavioral observations. Don't be afraid to reach out. Sometimes anxiety is linked to other developmental or learning differences like ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, or processing delays. Addressing these root issues holistically can bring remarkable relief. Lastly, spiritual and cultural lenses matter. Some children carry ancestral or familial trauma, even if unspoken. Others grow up in cultures where emotions are not freely expressed. Recognizing these deeper dynamics and not shaming them gives us compassion and patience. Anxiety is not a flaw. It is often a byproduct of deeply sensitive souls trying to survive in an overwhelming world. And when we honor that truth, we can speak directly to the heart of the anxious child. You're not broken, you're burdened. And we are here to help you carry it until you can walk free. 2. Create a safe and predictable environment. An anxious child's nervous system is like an overly sensitive alarm, constantly scanning for danger, constantly bracing for the worst. When the world feels chaotic or unpredictable, their internal alarms go off with greater intensity. The antidote to this chaos is structure. Safety, both emotional and physical, begins with predictability. Creating a structured, consistent environment doesn't mean being rigid or authoritarian. It means offering a steady rhythm to life that helps the child feel secure. Routine is a powerful tool for anxious children. Morning rituals, mealtime schedules, and bedtime routines offer them a sense of what's next. When children know what to expect, they are better able to relax. This doesn't mean life must be perfectly controlled, but it does mean we reduce unnecessary surprises. If a change is coming, a new teacher, a doctor's visit, a vacation, we prepare them in advance, walk them through what will happen, use visual schedules or social stories if needed. Predictability turns fear into familiarity. The environment should also be emotionally safe. That begins with how adults respond. If a child spills something, breaks a toy, or expresses fear, how do we react? Do we shout, dismiss, laugh, or do we stay calm, get on their level and say, it's okay, let's clean this up together? Every reaction is a building block, building either fear or trust. Emotional safety means a child knows they can fail, cry, or panic, and they won't be punished or ridiculed for it. Physical spaces matter too. A calming home or classroom space can do wonders. Reduce clutter. Use soft lighting. Create a quiet corner with pillows, books, and sensory tools. Let the child have some control over their environment. The color of their blanket, the placement of their desk, or the choice of background music while working. These small changes help them feel seen and in control. Another vital piece of a predictable environment is consistency in discipline. Anxious children do not thrive under harsh or inconsistent rules. If the rules change depending on the adult's mood, the child remains on edge. Boundaries should be clear, fair, and enforced with calm authority. Consequences should be logical and explained, not given out of anger. When children know what the limits are, and that those limits are lovingly enforced, they feel safer. Language also contributes to safety. Use calming, clear phrases. Avoid threats or sarcasm. Speak with intention and warmth. Instead of stop crying, it's not a big deal. Say, I see this is hard for you right now. I'm here. Instead of, why are you acting like this again? Say, let's take a deep breath together and figure out what's bothering you. Our words have the power to escalate anxiety or soothe it. Transitions are especially hard for anxious children. Moving from one activity to another, especially if abrupt, can trigger distress. Use timers, visual countdowns, or verbal reminders to signal change. In 5 minutes, we'll be putting the toys away and heading to the kitchen for lunch. When transitions are framed positively and predictably, children feel more in control. Part of creating safety is honoring the child's voice. Allow them to express preferences, to say no when appropriate, to share their fears without being shut down. Listen actively, nod, reflect their words back to them. This communicates that their feelings matter, even if you can't always change the situation. When children feel heard, they feel safe. Consistency in adult behavior is equally crucial. A caregiver who is warm one moment and angry the next creates confusion. Emotional whiplash undermines safety. We must manage our own stress, create consistent routines, and speak with stable tones. An anxious child needs to know who they're waking up to. Not a mystery, but a reliable, caring adult. Creating a safe and predictable environment does not eliminate all anxiety, but it significantly reduces its triggers. And more importantly, it communicates this message: you are not alone. The world may be uncertain, but this space, this home, this heart is safe. That message, repeated through rhythms, rituals, and relationships, becomes the soil where bravery is born. 3. Build trust through consistent presence and empathy. Trust is the bridge between fear and bravery. For an anxious child, that bridge is not built overnight. It's constructed through steady presence, patient listening, and loving empathy. A child who is anxious is not just seeking safety in the environment, they are seeking safety in relationships. They want to know, can I count on you when I'm scared? Will you be the same tomorrow as you are today? Consistency in our presence and responses becomes the cornerstone of their courage. Presence begins with availability. Not just physical presence, but emotional presence. A parent or teacher might be in the room, but if their attention is consumed by phones, work, or their own worries, the child senses the emotional absence. Being truly present means putting down distractions, making eye contact, and listening with intention. For an anxious child, knowing that they have your full attention creates a sacred space where their heart can speak. Empathy is not solving, it's seeing. When a child says, "I'm scared to go to school," we don't need to immediately fix it with logic or dismiss it with encouragement. We start by joining them in their feeling. "That sounds really hard. Tell me more about what you're worried about." These words don't make the fear disappear, but they do make the child feel understood, and that alone is incredibly soothing. Consistency means showing up the same way, regardless of circumstances. If a child is throwing a tantrum or shutting down in silence, our response should not be one of frustration or punishment, but of steadiness. The anxious child is testing the waters. Can you handle me even when I'm messy? Every time we respond with calm instead of chaos, they internalize the belief, I'm safe even when I'm overwhelmed. Trust is also built through follow-through. If we say we'll attend their school event, we show up. If we promise a bedtime story, we keep our word. For children who fear abandonment or inconsistency, broken promises register as deep emotional wounds. But when our words and actions align, we become anchors in their drifting world. Body language matters. Gentle tone, open posture, and a calm face reassure the child that we are not only listening, but emotionally attuned. A tight jaw, crossed arms, or furrowed brows might signal judgment or impatience, even if our words don't. The way we look at a child, the way we touch their shoulder, the way we pause to let them speak, these small acts accumulate into monumental trust. Anxious children also need predictability in our emotional state. If a parent is warm in the morning but volatile in the evening, the child lives on edge. They learn to walk on emotional eggshells, suppressing their needs to avoid conflict. Our job is not to be perfect, but to be predictably calm. When we fail, as we all do, we model humility by apologizing and reconnecting. "I was too harsh earlier. I'm sorry." You didn't deserve that. These moments restore trust and teach emotional accountability. Listening without judgment is another act of trust building. An anxious child might express irrational fears or confusing thoughts. Instead of correcting them immediately, we validate first. "It makes sense that you'd be nervous about that test. You care about doing well." Only after validation can we help them challenge the fear. When children feel safe to express without censorship, they begin to untangle their anxiety themselves. Empathy also means tuning into nonverbal cues. Some children won't say they're anxious, but they'll fidget, avoid eye contact, or act out. Observing these signs and responding gently, "You seem nervous right now. Want to talk or take a break?" shows that we are emotionally attuned. Over time, this teaches children to recognize and name their own emotions. Rituals of connection are powerful. Whether it's a nightly chat before bed, a weekly walk together, or a morning affirmation, these moments reinforce, "I'm here for you," consistently. Anxious children often fear disconnection. Repeated acts of warmth remind them, "Our bond is safe. You don't have to earn my love. It's already yours." Lastly, we must extend empathy to ourselves. Supporting an anxious child can be exhausting and triggering. If we are depleted, we cannot offer presence or patience. Taking care of our emotional health through therapy, rest, or support groups is not selfish, it's strategic. A regulated adult creates a regulated child. Your calm is their compass. To build trust through consistent presence and empathy is to say with every action, "I see you, I hear you, I'm with you." In the end, bravery doesn't grow in isolation, it grows in connection, one steady, empathetic moment at a time. 4. Teach emotional vocabulary and expression. One of the greatest barriers to healing childhood anxiety is a lack of emotional vocabulary. Children are not born with the language to describe what they're feeling. Their bodies react with tears, withdrawal, or outbursts, but their words may lag behind. And without words, emotions can feel overpowering, confusing, and even shameful. Teaching emotional vocabulary isn't just about naming feelings. It's about giving children ownership of their inner world. Emotional literacy starts with modeling. Children learn from observing adults. When we narrate our own emotions clearly, "I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, so I'm going to take a deep breath," we provide a roadmap. It shows them that emotions are normal, manageable, and temporary. We must remove the stigma that emotions are good or bad. Instead, we present them as messages, signals from the heart that deserve attention, not suppression. For anxious children, this is especially important. They often feel a whirlwind of sensations, but don't know what to call them. By introducing simple feeling words, scared, worried, nervous, sad, frustrated, we help them make sense of their experiences. Visual emotion charts with faces and labels can be incredibly effective, especially for younger children. You might start each day by asking, "How are you feeling today? Can you point to it on the chart?" This not only builds vocabulary, but opens the door to connection. Books and stories are another powerful tool. Reading together about characters who feel anxious or afraid allows children to identify with someone else and discuss emotions in a non-threatening way. After reading, ask questions like, "What do you think she was feeling? What would you feel if that happened to you?" These discussions gently lead children to reflect on their own emotions without pressure. Art, music, and play also serve as emotional languages. Children may express their inner world through drawing, dancing, pretend play, or even building with blocks. A child might draw a storm cloud when they're anxious or role-play a superhero who overcomes fear. Pay attention to their creations. They offer valuable insight into the child's heart. Afterward, help them name what they created. "That storm cloud looks powerful. Is that how you feel sometimes when you're nervous?" Journaling can be introduced for older children. A feelings journal, even one with simple prompts like, "Today I felt. What made me feel that way was, and next time I'll try," helps them reflect, process, and prepare. If they don't enjoy writing, voice recordings or drawing entries can work just as well. It's also crucial to teach children the difference between feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. For instance, feeling nervous about a presentation is normal, but the thought, "I'll mess up and everyone will laugh at me," can fuel anxiety. Helping children separate the feeling from the exaggerated thought teaches them to evaluate rather than obey every worry. "Just because I think it doesn't mean it's true" becomes a powerful mantra. Validate feelings without inflating them. When a child says, "I'm scared," avoid responses like, "Don't be silly," or "There's nothing to worry about." Instead, respond with, "Thank you for telling me. Being scared is okay. Let's talk about it." Then gently guide them to explore the fear. Ask, "Where do you feel it in your body?" Or "What would help you feel a little safer right now?" These questions deepen awareness and regulation. Teaching coping statements is another important step. Help children learn phrases like, "This is hard, but I can do hard things. I felt scared before and got through it." Or, "It's okay to feel nervous. It means I care." Writing these on cards or posters and practicing them daily turns them into emotional reflexes. Group discussions, whether at home, in therapy, or school settings, can also normalize emotional expression. A feeling circle, where everyone shares a moment they felt worried that day, builds community and reduces shame. It tells the anxious child, you're not alone in your feelings. We all have them. Teaching emotional vocabulary must be an ongoing process. Repetition is key. Praise children, not just for their bravery, but for how they articulate it. You told me you were nervous and asked for help. That's incredibly brave. Highlight moments when they express themselves clearly. Over time, this practice builds self-awareness, emotional regulation, and self-esteem. In the end, emotional vocabulary is not just about words, it's about connection. It's about helping children translate the storms inside them into something we can navigate together. And once they know how to speak their truth, fear loses its grip and bravery finds its voice. 5. Model brave behavior in daily life. Children are keen observers. Long before they understand complex ideas or listen to extended reasoning, they are already watching us. They absorb how we respond to fear, how we handle disappointment, and how we step into difficult situations. Modeling brave behavior is one of the most potent tools for helping anxious children become courageous. When children see adults navigating challenges with calm confidence and self-awareness, they begin to believe, if they can do it, maybe I can too. Bravery does not mean the absence of fear. It means choosing to act in spite of it. So when adults admit their fears and take action anyway, it creates a powerful message. For example, a parent might say, I feel a little nervous about this presentation at work, but I've prepared and I know I'll do my best. This shows the child that fear doesn't have to be a stop sign. It can be a signal to take a breath, steady yourself, and move forward. Children often internalize the messages they receive indirectly. If a child sees a parent avoiding social situations, becoming visibly panicked during routine stressors, or speaking negatively about their abilities, that child may mirror those same patterns. Conversely, when the child sees the adult pause to breathe, speak with hope, ask for help, or approach a new situation with openness, it normalizes those brave behaviors. Narration is a helpful tool. Explain your thought process when managing fear or stress. I was feeling overwhelmed earlier, so I took a short walk to calm down. Or I wasn't sure how to talk to that person, but I reminded myself that being kind is always a good place to start. This kind of transparency teaches children the mechanics of emotional regulation and brave thinking. Daily routines provide dozens of opportunities to model bravery. When trying a new food, attending a social gathering, or even apologizing after a mistake. These small moments, when done with intention, show children what courage looks like. It's not about dramatic acts of heroism. It's about showing up with strength in the mundane and modeling emotional resilience in the messiness of life. It's important to emphasize that modeling bravery doesn't mean never showing vulnerability. In fact, appropriate vulnerability is a vital component. Saying I'm scared of failing too sometimes, but I know that won't stop me from trying, helps children realize that being brave doesn't mean being perfect. It means being persistent. Encouraging bravery in everyday tasks can also be effective. For instance, when a child sees a parent try something new, a recipe, a language, or a workout, and push through discomfort, it helps normalize effort and imperfection. Let children see your learning curve, let them see you mess up, laugh, and try again. This teaches them that growth lies on the other side of fear. Avoid catastrophizing in front of children. If we overreact to small inconveniences, lost keys, traffic, minor conflicts, we inadvertently teach children that the world is unpredictable and overwhelming. Instead, practice calmness. Use these moments to say, this is frustrating, but we'll figure it out. Such modeling lays a foundation of resilience. Encourage bravery in others too, and let your child hear it. I was proud of your uncle today, even though he was nervous, he spoke up in that meeting. Or did you see how your friend kept trying even when the game was hard? That's brave. This form of social modeling expands the child's definition of courage beyond their own home. When correcting behavior, shift from shame to encouragement. Rather than saying, why are you always so scared? Try, I know this is hard, but I believe in you. Remember yesterday when you were nervous and still went to class? That was brave. Highlight past moments of courage to build confidence for future ones. Bravery can also be integrated through rituals and routines. Create a brave jar where the child can drop a small note every time they do something brave, from speaking up to sleeping alone. Celebrate these wins weekly. Over time, they'll see their own bravery written out and reinforced. Storytelling is another powerful method. Share stories from your own childhood or from heroes who overcame fear. Focus not on perfection, but perseverance. Tell how you once had a fear and how you managed it. Authenticity matters more than polish. Even in spiritual or moral development, bravery plays a role. Praying in public, standing up for someone, or making the right choice when it's unpopular. These are all courageous acts. Let your child see you live your values with quiet courage. Most importantly, acknowledge the child's efforts when they display even small acts of bravery. You looked nervous when we walked into the party, but you stayed with me and then started talking to your cousin. That was so brave. Catch bravery in action and name it. This helps rewire the child's self-image from "I'm anxious" to "I can be brave." In the end, bravery is contagious. The more you live it, the more they absorb it. Be the mirror they can look into and see courage reflected back at them. With your consistent example, bravery moves from concept to character, from occasional moments to a way of life. 6. Empower through small wins and gradual exposure. Bravery isn't built overnight. It's cultivated moment by moment through small victories that gradually reshape how a child sees themselves. An anxious child doesn't need to be pushed into the deep end of fear to grow. They need to be gently invited into manageable challenges where they can experience success. Empowering through small wins and gradual exposure is a methodical way to rewire the brain's association with fear. It turns avoidance into confidence. Start small. The key is not to eliminate fear, but to help the child face it in bite-sized, achievable doses. If a child is afraid of sleeping alone, don't begin with an entire night by themselves. Instead, try sitting with them for a few minutes after lights out, then gradually shorten your stay. Each success becomes a stepping stone to the next. Celebrate each win, no matter how small. You stayed in your room for 5 minutes tonight. That's amazing. We're building up your brave muscles. Gradual exposure works best when it's personalized. Identify the child's specific fears and break them down into a hierarchy, from least scary to most scary. If social anxiety is the concern, the steps might look like making eye contact, saying hello to a peer, participating in group play, then eventually speaking in front of a class. This ladder of bravery makes the process less overwhelming. It gives the child a visual reminder that progress is possible. The pace must be child-led. If you push too hard, too fast, you risk reinforcing the fear. But if you move gently, always inviting and never forcing, you give the child control. Control is crucial. Anxiety often stems from feeling helpless or out of control, so by offering them agency in the process, letting them choose the next step or decide when they're ready, you restore a sense of mastery. Celebrate effort, not just outcomes. Maybe they didn't give a full presentation, but they stood up and made eye contact. Maybe they didn't go to the party, but they helped you plan what they would wear if they did. Each micro step is a seed of courage. Praise the process. You did something hard, and you didn't give up. These affirmations teach children to define success, not by perfection, but by progress. Regulate the environment. Reduce stressors and sensory overload. Anxiety often thrives in overstimulation. For sensitive or anxious children, environments filled with loud noises, bright lights, chaotic schedules, and unpredictable interruptions can push their nervous system into a constant state of alert. One of the most compassionate steps we can take is to actively regulate their environment, creating a space that calms their senses rather than bombards them. Start by evaluating the physical environment. Is the home or classroom cluttered, noisy, or visually chaotic? Consider simplifying and softening the space. Use warm, muted colors and soft lighting. Incorporate natural elements like plants, wood textures, or calming music in the background. Sensory-friendly areas, like a quiet reading nook with bean bags or a weighted blanket corner, offer refuge during overwhelming moments. Pay attention to auditory stressors. Even background noise like a television, a beeping appliance, or street traffic can contribute to sensory overload. Noise-canceling headphones, white noise machines, or calming soundtracks can reduce auditory stress. Children should be encouraged to voice when a noise feels too much. Giving them permission to remove themselves from auditory chaos honors their nervous system's needs. Visual clutter is another source of tension. Limit excessive decorations, blinking lights, or fast-moving visuals in the child's environment. Use bins and labels to organize toys and materials. A clean, predictable space provides not only physical order but mental clarity. Regulate the environment, reduce stressors and sensory overload. Anxiety often thrives in overstimulation. For sensitive or anxious children, environments filled with loud noises, bright lights, chaotic schedules, and unpredictable interruptions can push their nervous system into a constant state of alert. One of the most compassionate steps we can take is to actively regulate their environment, creating a space that calms their senses rather than bombards them. Start by evaluating the physical environment. Is the home or classroom cluttered, noisy, or visually chaotic? Consider simplifying and softening the space. Use warm, muted colors and soft lighting. Incorporate natural elements like plants, wood textures, or calming music in the background. Sensory-friendly areas like a quiet reading nook with beanbags or a weighted blanket corner offer refuge during overwhelming moments. Pay attention to auditory stressors. Even background noise like a television, a beeping appliance, or street traffic can contribute to sensory overload. Noise-canceling headphones, white noise machines, or calming soundtracks can reduce auditory stress. Children should be encouraged to voice when a noise feels too much. Giving them permission to remove themselves from auditory chaos honors their nervous system's needs. Visual clutter is another source of tension. Limit excessive decorations, blinking lights, or fast-moving visuals in the child's environment. Use bins and labels to organize toys and materials. A clean, predictable space provides not only physical order, but mental clarity. Equally important is regulating emotional environments. Homes filled with yelling, criticism, or unpredictable emotional outbursts can mirror the chaos of overstimulation. Strive to create emotionally stable atmospheres where calm communication is the norm. Use gentle tones, validate feelings, and resolve conflict with kindness and clarity. Children absorb emotional energy like sponges. They flourish in peace and wither in tension. Schedules should be balanced and not packed to exhaustion. Overscheduled children often experience anxiety due to lack of downtime. Ensure the day includes rest, play, quiet time, and predictable transitions. Use visual schedules to reduce the mental load of remembering what comes next. The more a child knows what to expect, the less space anxiety has to grow. Finally, don't overlook the impact of digital environments. Overexposure to screens, especially fast-paced, brightly colored, or violent media, can overstimulate the nervous system. Set gentle boundaries around screen time and substitute digital engagement with real-world sensory experiences. Nature walks, art projects, or simple tactile play like sand, water, or clay. By reducing environmental stressors, we're not just creating a quieter space, we're creating a sanctuary for growth. In calm spaces, anxious children breathe deeper, think clearer, and begin to find their footing. And when the world feels less like a threat, they are finally free to explore the strength that was always inside them. Encourage positive self-talk and affirmation. The words children speak to themselves shape the way they view the world and, more importantly, how they see themselves. Anxious children often internalize messages of fear, inadequacy, or doubt. They replay phrases like, "I can't do this, something bad will happen," or "I'm not good enough." These internal dialogues, repeated over time, become ingrained beliefs that feed anxiety and shrink confidence. That's why teaching positive self-talk is not just a strategy, it's a shift in identity. Positive self-talk is not about blind optimism. It's about introducing truthful, empowering language to counteract fear-based narratives. We help children notice their thoughts first. What were you saying to yourself when you started to feel nervous? This awareness is the first step. Then we teach them to challenge those thoughts gently and replace them with affirmations rooted in courage, experience, and love. Affirmations can be short, powerful phrases repeated daily. Statements like, "I am safe, I am brave, I can try again, and I can ask for help" become emotional anchors. When spoken regularly, they begin to rewire the brain's responses. Children move from reactive fear to intentional courage. It's helpful to write these affirmations on colorful cards, post them on mirrors, or include them in bedtime routines. Caregivers and educators play a vital role in reinforcing positive language. Praise children for effort, not just outcomes. "You were nervous, but you spoke up anyway. That shows courage." Or "You didn't give up, even when you were scared. That's brave thinking. The more they hear strength being named in them, the more they begin to internalize that voice. I involve the child in their own progress plan. One of the most powerful ways to build bravery in an anxious child is to give them ownership of their healing. When children are involved in setting their own goals and tracking their own progress, they begin to view themselves not as passive victims of anxiety, but as active participants in their growth. This mindset shift is transformative. It fosters agency, confidence, and accountability, all necessary ingredients for courage to flourish. Start by having open conversations about what they want to work on. Ask questions like, what's one thing you wish felt easier? Or what's something you'd like to be able to do without fear? These questions give the child a chance to express their own vision of progress, rather than having it imposed on them. When goals originate from the child, they carry greater motivation and meaning. Once a goal is identified, break it down into small, manageable steps, but do this collaboratively. Use a chart or a journal where they can visually track their wins. Let them draw a ladder or mountain, and with each completed step, they climb higher. Whether it's making eye contact, walking into a classroom alone, or speaking up at the dinner table, each achievement becomes a rung on the ladder to bravery. Encourage the child to create their own bravery plan. Ask them, what do you want to remember when you feel scared? Let them write down coping tools like breathing techniques, self-talk statements, or actions like holding a trusted object. Let them decorate the plan with stickers, drawings, or affirmations. Ownership enhances engagement. Tracking progress together also strengthens the parent-child or teacher-child bond. When adults sit down with children and reflect on their growth, even if it's just one small step, they reinforce the message, I see you, I believe in you, you're growing. That relational connection is itself a catalyst for courage. Seek professional support when necessary. While many tools for helping an anxious child can be implemented at home or in the classroom, there are times when professional support becomes not just helpful but essential. Anxiety disorders in children can be deeply rooted, multifaceted, and at times resistant to well-meaning efforts from parents or teachers. Recognizing when a child's struggles exceed the scope of informal strategies is a sign of wisdom, not failure. Start by watching for red flags that anxiety is impairing the child's daily life. These might include consistent avoidance of school or social settings, physical symptoms like headaches or stomach aches with no medical explanation, frequent panic attacks, sleep disturbances, extreme irritability, or obsessive behaviors. If anxiety begins to interfere with friendships, academic performance, or family life, it's time to consult a licensed mental health professional. Therapists trained in child psychology bring valuable insight. They can assess whether the child meets criteria for a clinical anxiety disorder and tailor treatment accordingly. One common and effective form of therapy is cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. CBT helps children identify distorted thinking patterns, reframe anxious thoughts, and practice new coping skills in a safe and structured environment. Sometimes, therapy extends beyond the child to include the family. Family therapy can be instrumental in shifting dynamics that unintentionally reinforce anxiety. For example, well-intended rescuing behaviors may prevent a child from developing resilience. A therapist can guide parents on how to support without enabling and how to strike the right balance between compassion and challenge. In more severe cases, especially where anxiety coexists with depression, trauma, or developmental disorders, a combination of therapy and medication may be considered. Pediatric psychiatrists can evaluate the risks and benefits of medication. While this is not a first-line approach, it can be life-changing when thoughtfully prescribed and carefully monitored. Conclusion: helping an anxious child become brave is one of the most sacred responsibilities we carry, not just as parents, teachers, or caregivers, but as a society. Every anxious child holds within them a reservoir of potential waiting to be unlocked. Their fears are not weaknesses. They are the very battles that will forge their strength. Through understanding, support, and deliberate guidance, we can help transform timidity into tenacity and anxiety into assurance. It is not about shielding children from the storm, but teaching them to anchor deep and sail through it. With the right tools, environments, and voices in their corner, children learn that fear is not final. It is something they can rise through. Every moment of empathy, every word of encouragement, and every small victory adds up to a larger reality where bravery becomes their new normal. Let us commit not only to managing their fears, but to raising warriors of calm, children who understand their emotions and feel empowered to walk through discomfort with confidence. Let us remind them over and over that they are never alone, that their fears are valid, and that their journey to courage is not just possible, but inevitable. Thank you for investing your time, your heart, and your attention into this vital message. If you are here, it means you care deeply about the well-being of a child, and that care will ripple out into healing, hope, and transformation. Let us keep standing beside every anxious child until they learn to stand strong on their own. May this message continue to ignite bravery in your home, your school, and your community. The work we do for our children today shapes the world of tomorrow, and it all begins with helping one anxious child become brave. Thank you.